Hello, and welcome to today's show. I am Brenda Holt, the Associate State Director of Community Outreach for the Arizona State Office of AARP. We are the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence and nearly 38 members across the nation and over 900,000 right here in Arizona, AARP strengthens communities and advocates for what matters most to families, such as health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment, to name a few. During the month of August, we will be focused on Thrive in the Job Market, where we will showcase AARP's relevance as a wise friend and fierce defender, helping workers find a job while fighting on their behalf against ageism. We will provide tips, advice, and resources to help you stay competitive in the job market and mitigate the impact that the corona pandemic has had on employment and income. Navigating today's ever-changing job market can be tough, but we're here to help you through it. Go to aarp.org/work for tips, tools and resources on how to stay competitive in the job market. And you can also visit us at aarp.org/az to find out about more events such as the ones that you will be participating in today and to find out about job resources. Be safe, be well. Thank you for attending today's program.
Welcome to the show. Get ready to meet your host for the night, Arizona's very own hip historian himself, Marshall Shore.
Well, hello, everybody. Good evening. I want to welcome you all to Arizona History Happy Hour. Here we are on August 19th. So happy you can join us. Now, I know some of you are watching us on YouTube. A couple of you are on Twitch, and even some of you are on Facebook. So thank you all so much for being here. This is our 33rd episode of this year so far. So we're doing good. We've got a great night for you tonight. Now, I always like to say, hey, you know what's going on? Well, you know, today was the day that Ronald Reagan, back in 1981, nominated Senator O'Connor to be Supreme Court Justice. Now, it's also National Soft Serve Ice Cream Day. So hopefully you went out and got yourself some ice cream out of an ice machine. It is also National Bow Day, hence why there it is over on that side. I'm wearing my bow tie. And if you know that ice cream wasn't sweet enough for you, you know, today is Happy Potato Day. So happy potato to all of you. Now, you know, there was this one, I think it was called Spud, which was a potato candy that I think was from Utah, that I had friends here who loved that potato candy. So, you know, I guess you could maybe have potato and ice cream mixed together. Not sure I'd want that on a topping, but you know, different strokes for different folks. It's all good. So what can you expect tonight? Well, you know, we're going to do a little bit of trivia. Indeed. Oh, you're right. It was Idaho Spud. Yes. And yeah, so it came in that little kind of a yellowish with a little dollop of a potato on it. So tonight we're going to have some trivia, and we've got some really cool stories for you with that. We also have show and tell. We also have a little bit of Arizona music history, as well as Little Arizona, and of course a cocktail. And of course it is indeed So somebody's commenting about how Twitch is a lot of video game players. It is, and now there's me on YouTube, on Twitch, sitting right next to all those people who are playing video games, which I am not very good at. Nobody would want to watch me play video games. So they get a chance to watch me talk about history. So, all right. Well, if this is your first time watching, you might wonder, who is that man on my screen and why is he there? Well, my name is Marshall Shore, and I have been in Arizona a little over 21 years. My journey started back in 21 years ago. I was working in Brooklyn at a library, a beautiful Carnegie building, and decided to trade that for a 1950s lifestyle in oh so many ways. So traded that for a 1950 library down in South Phoenix, which was called Harmon Library. It was over on 7th Avenue, actually it was more like 4th Avenue and Buckeye. And so that's what got me to Arizona. Now they're in a really fancy new library just over on 7th Avenue. But you know, there was this rich oral tradition of the community. And that really, one of the things that got me thinking was, people aren't really talking about that modern history. And so that's one of the things that kind of encouraged me to do exactly what I'm doing. And to do it all, we had to load everything into a big orange cube, a U-Haul. And you know, their international world headquarters are just north on Central a little bit. And promptly moved in. When I said I traded for a 1956 or a 1950s lifestyle, I wasn't kidding, because we then moved to a 1956 ranch that originally was lots of beige. I am happy to say now it is seafoam and cantaloupe, just two tones. Much, much better. And there's what my kitchen looks like today. All that buttercream yellow tile with the matching in-law oven, and the push buttons, if you look really close, are inset on the wall for that matching stovetop. And that's just what it looks like today. Now, as soon as I got here, all I kept hearing about how there was no history here. But I knew that wasn't true, because every time I went somewhere, whether it was on foot, on a bike, in a car, I came faced with so many amazing people, places, and stories. That also influenced me to do exactly what I'm doing now. And then that post-war boom that I think in a lot of ways made the Arizona that we all know and love today. All those GIs that either were stationed here, trained here, or passing their way to somewhere else. And after the war, they were moving here in huge numbers, and a lot of cases looking for a house just like mine. Now, I'm also called the hip historian, and which means I get to have a lot of fun. Why, coming up in September, it's going to be tour season again. And so we are starting off with a walking tour where everyone will be fully masked as we take about a 2-mile jaunt, a 2-hour, 2-mile jaunt around downtown, talking about haunted history. And so you can find more about that by going to hiphistorian.com. Also, starting in October, we recently just got a grant from Phoenix Office on Arts and Culture to start doing LGBT storytelling. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So keep an eye out for that and pass it along to folks. It will be virtual as well, so that way people can attend from wherever they would like to tell. Now, I see some of you have found the chat. If at some point you missed the chat, or you want to comment or have a suggestion, you can throw it out to me on Facebook, Instagram, email, whatever is good. I love to hear from you all, because, you know, that's actually really why I'm doing this, because all my best stuff comes from talking to people, hearing their stories, and then being, oh my gosh, we should delve further into that. And so that's just what we're doing. Now, I'm going to forewarn you that you'll want to share this. So I'll even remind you once we're done, because this is going to be a really cool night as we talk about some really amazing history. And so if you're on Facebook, there's a little share button. If you can, please share. If not, you know, thank you so much. But I just want everyone to know how much fun we're having with Arizona history. Now, I talk about being from Brooklyn, but I originally started off in Indiana in a little tiny farm town, about 25 people. So I really kind of have this affinity for not just big towns, but also small towns. And so tonight we're going to talk about Mayor, which originally started off in Big Bug, was the name of the station. Now, Mayor was established in 1882. And it was the stop between Phoenix and Prescott. Now, if you get up there today, you'll find a little plaque that says exactly that it was Big Bug. And it started off as kind of a business corridor. And if you go today, you can still find some of those historic buildings, such as the Mercantile, the hotel from 1897, a schoolhouse from 1914, just after statehood. You can also go visit the old train station without ever leaving Phoenix, because in the early 60s, it was bought and relocated to the top of basically near Northern Avenue and Piestewa Freeway. And so it's been redone, and so you can see the old Mayor train station right here in Phoenix. Now, it is also, Mayor was home to a site with the Japanese internment camps that once the folks were collected, before the internment camps were finished, Mayor was one of the holding spots for those. And so the building that was used has been torn down, and there still has nothing been built on that spot. All right. Well, it would not be happy hour without a libation. And, PJ over at the Valley Ho always comes up with some really good things. And so tonight we are having Cowboy Cookout. Now, let's see how my bartender is doing. There we go. So what we have here is, PJ makes this delicious cocktail that I just have to shake up. Now, it's going to be nowhere near as beautiful as the one that he made for me, but this one is a lot easier. Then I just dump it into the glass there. No, it's not too bad looking. And so this is our Cowboy Cookout. Now, in Cowboy Cookout, we've got a little bit of Uncle Nearest American whiskey. There is a little bit of apricot Luxardo. So look at all the good stuff in there. All right. So you can see we've got a little bit of High West Campfire whiskey in there. Aquafaba, which is actually the juice from chickpeas. That's how we get that little foam on top. And a little bit of lemon juice. And it pretty much tastes like something you would want to have at a really nice campfire. All right, well, let's get rid of my bartender because nobody needs to see him now that he's done his work for the evening. All right. So we have a special guest. And so is it behind door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3? Let's pick this door. And we're going to bring on Alex.
Well, hey, good evening, everybody. How you doing tonight?
Hey, Alex, how are you?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I got my little campfire cookout going right now, so
I like that. I like that. I've got my margarita going right here.
Ah, very good. So, all right. So tell us a little about yourself, Alex.
Well, my name is Alex Corona. I am the 7th child of a family of 8. Our mother and father, Felix and Soledad Corona. We used to manage the Orpheum Theater downtown Phoenix here from the 1970s, or 1970 to about the mid 80s, to when the city bought it and took it over. We also owned Corona Ranch in South Phoenix, formerly known as Lienzo Charro el Herradero y Casino Charro, back in the early 70s, mid 70s and 80s, but now known as Corona Ranch. Been there at Corona Ranch for, we were at the theater at the Orpheum, formerly known as the Palace West Theater and the Paramount. But during the time we were there, it was called the Palace West Theater. We were there and showed Spanish films and Hispanic entertainment for almost 20 years. And during that time, created a couple other businesses there.
And I'm sure we're going to hear more about some of those things when we go through some trivia. So, all right. All right, now our trivia here is a little different in the fact that what we do is we're going to go through the questions. We'll take a little bit of an Arizona music break, and then we will go through all the answers. So unlike most bar trivia where you just walk away with the answer, you have no idea the story behind, that's exactly what this show is all about, are those stories behind the answers. All right, so you can keep track of this. I've had people send me photos of it on their arm, on their leg, written in marker. You can do it on a pad and paper. If you have a sandwich nearby and you want to write it in mustard, you go right ahead. No one's going to say anything about it. So let's start off with our very first question, number 1. In what year did the Orpheum Theater start construction, and in what year did its doors open? Was it A, 1925 and 1927? Or was it B, 1927 and 1929? Was it C, 1929 and 1931 when it opened its doors? Or did it start construction in 1931 and open its doors in 1935? So one of those is the right answer about when did the Orpheum Theater start construction, and then what year did it open? All right, on to question 2. Who was the last owner of the theater prior to the city of Phoenix acquiring the building? A, Dan Harkins. B, Harry Nace. C, James Nederlander. Or D, Alex Corona. Who was the last owner of the theater prior to the city acquiring that building? All right, moving on to question 3. What Broadway plays did Mr. Nederlander bring to the Palace West Theater? A, Annie. B, Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. C, the Mexican play Chucho El Toro, Chucho El Roto.
Perfect.
Thank you. Or D, all of the above. All right. So which Broadway plays did he bring to the Palace West Theater? All right. When did the Corona family take lease of the theater? And for how long did they do it? All right. Was it A, 1955 to 1972? Was it B, 1965 to 1970? C, 1970 to 1987? Or D, 1985 to 1989? All right, so one of those is the correct time span for when the Corona family was there at the Palace West, the Orpheum. All right, what year was the Corona Ranch or Casino Charro El Herradero founded? A, 1970, B, 1975, C, 1980, or D, 1984? So how was my pronunciation of that?
That was pretty good. Let's hear it again.
Oh, you're testing me. Here, I'm going to take a sip first before I launch into my bad pronunciation.
Here, we'll do a Milli Vanilli. You move your lips. Ready?
Oh, that's great.
Ready?
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Casino Charro el Herradero.
See, I pronounced it perfectly that time. All right. So back in 1985, what Denver producer started organizing concerts at the theater? A, Quincy Jones, B, Barry Fay, C, Prince, or D, Emilio Estefan. So which one of those producers from Denver started putting on shows at the Orpheum? All right, question 7. What prominent organization here in the Valley does Corona Ranch have an affiliation with? And, you know, there is a hint. We'll see if it's a very good hint. All right, so the hint is 1846. All right, so with those in mind, is the organization that they have a relationship with, is that Carver Cultural Center and Museum, B, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, C, Cementerio Lindo, or D, the Irish Cultural Center? All right, so one of those is an organization they are affiliated with over at the Corona Ranch. Question 8. What retired, rest in peace, congressman held his annual holiday celebration at Corona Ranch every year? Hint, he was county supervisor for District 7 in 1976. Is the answer A, Ruben Gallego, B, Ed Pastor, C, Carl Hayden, or D, John McCain? So one of those folks held their annual Christmas party always at Corona Ranch. All right, question 9. Who built the irrigation canals still used by the Corona Ranch and surrounding farmers to date? Who built them? All right, so is it A, Jack Swilling, B, the Hohokam, C, A.J. Chandler, or D, Boyce Thompson? So one of those built those canals used by the Corona Ranch and other farmers down in the area. All right, so we are coming up to our final question. All right. Oh, and I think I'm going to need some Milli Vanilli help on this one. I mean, I can get Charro, but there's a lot of... All right. All right, so let's get ready. Okay, so when was the last...
National Escaramuza Championship.
Held at the Coronado Ranch? Was that A, 1995, B, 2007, C, 2012, or D, 2019? All right, now we're going to take a little bit of an era music break while you kind of figure out what your answers, you know, you might want to go back and after hearing that precise pronunciation of some of those words, you might want to change your answer. I agree. I think that requires another
drink.
Indeed. All right, so we're taking a little bit of an Arizona music break, and so we are going to talk about Lalo Guerrero. So Lalo was born in Tucson, Christmas Eve, back in 1916. And for all the music that he wrote, played across between, I mean, basically really was the father of Chicano music. Started off in Tucson, moved to LA, and I mean, he even got a Golden Eagle Award from the president, and so was invited to the White House by Jimmy Carter to play. So all kinds of accolades. So if you do make it up to the MEM, they do have a great little display of Lalo Guerrero. Because we don't have any copyright for his music, we sadly aren't going to play Marijuana Boogie or any of his other hits. But please go track down some Lalo Guerrero music. I think you might be able to find him now on Spotify. He's that popular again, which is great. All right, so now we're ready for some answers. All right, so what year did Orpheum start construction and what year did it open? B, 1927 and 1929. Now, I mean, back then the Orpheum would have just been, Orpheum at that point was the luxurious movie house or vaudeville house on the block. I mean, it had air conditioning, which was a new thing at that point. They had just introduced talkies, so they actually had a state-of-the-art sound system as well as an amazing organ.
Yes, absolutely. You know, it was the acoustics in the building were just incredible. You could stand in the middle of the stage and clap your hands and just hear that echo throughout the whole auditorium. Really interesting.
Wow.
You know, the fact that it had air conditioning. It was, I believe, one of the first buildings in downtown Phoenix that had air conditioning. So my understanding is that people would go there in the summertime to cool off.
Right. And it was back when you didn't go just for one movie. I mean, it was a day-long adventure. I mean, you went to go see a double feature with intermission and all kinds of cartoons and news going on beforehand. So
sure, absolutely. You know, during the time that my understanding is that when it first opened, it was open for vaudeville. So vaudeville shows, movies really hadn't started just yet. They were all silent movies. So the pipe organ, everything that played along with it, the orchestra pit that was in there was just incredible.
Indeed. And it also had, it was such an ornate theater. I mean, it was like, and now when you walk in, you see that sky above you again.
You know, that's absolutely wonderful that the city took it over and restored all that, because during the time that we were there as a family that ran the property or ran the building, ran the theater, when we came in 1970, the walls had already been painted over. The ceiling had been taken, you know, the stars and all that stuff had been taken away. So none of that really existed. I didn't experience any of that until now.
Wow. So now that was there when you guys were there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I believe it was in 1969, just before 70, Mr. Nederlander had done some work to the building, or somebody, but they had painted over those things. We had no idea those Baroques were behind those walls. Behind those back walls.
Wow.
You know, so now to see it, it's pretty incredible. Absolutely.
I can only imagine, because it's such a beautiful space.
Fun place to grow up in.
I can only imagine. It must have been a huge playground.
You should ask my friends. Absolutely. My brothers and sisters crawling up above the well, if you're looking at the stage, it's that big arch kind of that goes over it, but crawling up on the catwalks, they had just these big, huge, thick ropes that they use. I think they were called ship ropes, or they use them for the plays to bring up screens and stuff. So all that was there. We would crawl up around that stuff. I mean, we were young. I was about 5 years old when we took over the building. Again, 7th of 8 kids, but you know, crawling up on that stuff. Now as an adult, knowing that the creaking that I heard, I could have fallen 2 floors.
Right. Yes. All right. So who was the last owner of the theater prior to the city acquiring the building? And that was James Nederlander. C.
Wonderful man, James Nederlander. Really success, a huge American success story he has. You know, a few years back, I had been listening to some news radio, and I had no idea that Mr. Nederlander, James Nederlander, Jimmy, as kind of the fun name that everybody called him, Jimmy. My parents, of course, I was little, Mr. Nederlander, but he had a lot to do with the Yankees becoming a successful team. Listening to the radio, they were talking about sports and the Yankees and the owner of the Yankees, how he became successful. He says, I had a friend of mine, his name was James Nederlander, and we knew him as Jimmy. So it didn't really strike me at the time. He says, if you want a successful team, buy good players. And he did, and he became it. But because of him, and then he said, he owned movie houses around the country, and it hit me. It struck me that it was him. So big story with him.
Wow. Well, and originally the Orpheum would have been, when you said vaudeville, would have been part of that whole Orpheum circuit. There was a whole chain of Orpheum theaters across the country, and there would have been shows that would have just theatrical shows that just kind of flowed through there.
Yes. The backstage had this huge, when we were there, it had this huge stage doors, huge, like a fire door. It was probably, 20 feet. Well, to me, I was little at the time, so 20 feet tall, like 20 feet wide. But it was hard. You had to slide it open. But I remember seeing on that door on the inside, there were stickers or little posters of things that had been there before. There was Marcel Marceau. There was a picture of him there that he had performed there.
Wow.
Cleopatra. Just so many really cool older things that were probably in the 30s and 40s. So when the building got restored, I have no idea whatever happened to that door. I hope somebody has it somewhere, but it was definitely a piece of history.
Wow.
So, salud.
Indeed. All right. So what Broadway plays did Mr. Letterbrander bring to the Palace West Theater? Was it A, Annie, B, Little House, Best Little House in Texas? Almost remember a TV show there. Oh, wrong, completely wrong show. C, the Mexican play, Chucho El Ruto. D, all of the above. And you can see the answers there. We have Annie. Yes. And it's all of the above. So he brought a whole slew of Broadway shows. I mean, I saw how Little House on the Prairie, or I'm sorry, not Little House on the Prairie, Best Little House in Texas had Barbara Mandrell starring in it. I'm like, oh my gosh, haven't heard that name in quite a while.
Yeah, he produced a lot of those Broadway shows. Well, pretty much most, I would say probably 90% of them across the country. And he owned movie houses like the Orpheum throughout the country, and that was his thing. So he would bring them to those movie houses, and this was one of his stops on the way to New York and Hollywood. But Annie was such a wonderful play. He did Pinocchio. Pinocchio was done with marionettes, life-size marionettes.
Oh my gosh!
And sitting in the front row, they would kind of swing out, fly over the audience, and come back. I want to say this was in the mid to late 70s when that happened, because I was really little. I remember going backstage before we'd go and open up the theater. So nobody had been there yet, but all the marionettes were hanging up backstage, and I would walk through them, and they were my size. So I'm like, wow! It was kind of scary, but really, really fun to see that, have that experience.
I can only imagine. I remember it's like when I was in New York, actually going to see performances at the Nederlander Theater. Yeah. So.
Yeah, he is definitely a true American success story. And to this date, he passed away a number of years ago, but to this date, his son and his family still continue the producing plays and concerts around the country.
Oh, nice. I didn't realize that. Okay. Yeah. All right. So when did the Corona family lease the theater, and for how long? So it was C, from 1970 to 1987. So wow, almost 20 years. That's an awfully long time.
See, I had to put my glasses on. I'm that good-looking kid in the bottom left.
Ah.
Wow. And so for some of your guests that are following through, I'll go ahead and name off my brothers and sisters, so because I'm sure they're watching and they'll like this. So the person next to me, above me, would be my sister Esperanza, Espy, and then above her is my mother, Soledad. Above her is my sister Maria. She is second oldest, and then we have an aunt of mine that's in there. But then the gentleman standing up is my brother Juan, the oldest. The one next to him is my brother Hector, and beneath him is my sister B. Next to her is my brother Armando, and then my sister Teresa, and my father there in the middle. But wow, that's how I remember the theater looking with that the, I don't know what you want to call it, the facade, the marquee.
Right, the marquee out front, and the sign hanging down, which sadly is no longer there.
Right, because apparently it that wasn't original to the building, so now the way it's restored. But that's how I remember the theater looking.
So, was this the only theater that you guys had?
No, through the years, it's funny that in the Latin community, it's very common that if you're a movie star, you're probably a singer, and if you're a singer, you're a movie star. So that my people would come to the theater to see their favorite singer on the screen. And my father had a great idea of starting a record shop. So you come out of the theater, you buy a record, and go home and listen to it. So with that, we thought, well, there's a couple other movie theaters became available around the valley. One was 35th Avenue and Indian School, called the Hayden Plaza West. So we acquired that movie theater and showed Spanish films. Mexican record shop there as well. And then in Chandler, there was a movie theater downtown, which just recently closed. It was a restaurant, turned into a restaurant called El Zócalo. But that was originally a movie theater, and that was one of our theaters as well. And then a record shop there as well. So a lot of kids, a lot of businesses to run.
And lots of free labor.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So what year was the Corona Ranch founded? Or I will let you say...
Casino Charro, El Herradero.
Well said. All right. So that was 1975.
Yes, in 75. There was a group of gentlemen that owned the property, and it was a rodeo grounds. But my understanding was that it had burned down, and there was, I guess there was little interest in it. But a group of guys that owned the property, and they wanted to sell it. Well, their attorney had heard of my father, that, hey, I hear there's this gentleman that runs the Orpheum Theater downtown at the Palace West, and shows Spanish films. He might be interested in it, because what it was built for was to perform our Mexican rodeos called charreadas, which is actually the national sport of Mexico. But my father, being a charro since he was very young, taught us his children to be charros, and his daughters to perform Escaramuza as a women's side saddle drill team that perform as well. But so contacted my father. And he said, yeah, you know what? Let's start it up again. Let's do these Mexican rodeos so we can bring performers and do shows there. So it kind of started that way, bring performers to the theater and then bring them out to Corona Ranch to do a little rodeo and perform at halftime, so so to speak. And it just kind of grew from there. That was almost 48 years ago now. So,
wow.
Yeah. A long time, and we're still there. Thank goodness our parents are still alive as well.
Oh, that's great. All right. So back in 1985, what Denver producer started organizing concerts at the theater? Oh, and I forgot the answer. It is Barry Fay.
Barry Fay.
And he brought in all kinds of things.
He did. And it was a really fun time for us, because I was still in high school. I think it was my last year of high school. So all our friends were, hey, hey, we want to come to these concerts. But it was REM, In Excess, UB40, Metallica,
Wow.
Howie Mandel was there. It was such a great time. During the 80s, that kind of punk rock, new wave started coming out. And all these bands, they were just kind of starting out. So the theater would accommodate 1,800 seats. So these bands were bands that would pull in 1,200 to 1,500 to 1,600, not really over capacity, although a couple of them sold out. But it was great to see them then and think of them now, how huge they are.
Yeah. Well, it was funny. A couple of years ago, went to go see Kraftwerk.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize that it kind of already had this history of kind of having this kind of new wave / punk music. So that is great. I mean, now I love it. I love that we went to go see it even more there because of just kind of reclaiming some of that history.
That's funny you say that, Kraftwerk. I have an album, literally vinyl, still that I bought back in the 80s when they came out.
Yeah. I mean, it was such a great place to see the music, which is all electronic, sitting in this, 1929 theater with all this techno pop going on was just phenomenal. Just that juxtaposition of the two was so much fun.
It was a great time.
All right. So what prominent organization here in the Valley does the Corona Ranch have an affiliation with? And I bet most people did not know this. It's the Irish Cultural Center.
Right. William Bill O'Brien, one of the founders of the Irish Cultural Center. And this gentleman has a huge history. You want to do some history, Marshall? Do a story on Bill O'Brien. You will be amazed at this gentleman that called Arizona his home. Bill O'Brien became a really good friend of my brother Hector. Age difference, huge age difference, but seemed like best of friends. But Bill O'Brien founded the Irish Cultural Center and really liked the Hispanic culture. Loved my father, loved the charreadas that we would do. And he and my brother Hector started an organization called Los San Patricios of Arizona. And what that is that we get together once a year and celebrate the bond between the Irish and the Mexicans. The story goes that in 1846, during the potato famine, when the Irish were immigrating to the United States, they were coming into New York. And what the American army was doing is putting them the government was putting them into the army and bringing them out to the West to fight the revolution against Mexico. And the story goes there was a battalion called the Saint Mike. I'm sorry, it escapes my mind at the moment. But they could see the mission across the battlefield. And one night they deserted the American army, went and joined forces with Mexico to fight against the U.S. The revolution. But fought in all campaigns. And there's a treaty between Mexico and Ireland that they will not extradite anybody to each other's country. So we would get together once a year and celebrate the bond between the Irish and Irish and the Mexicans. We would do it 1 year at the Irish Cultural Center and 1 year at Corona Ranch.
Oh wow!
But yeah, Bill O'Brien is definitely a true Arizona history story. He and three other gentlemen, my understanding is that they purchased the top of Camelback Mountain, the very top of it, so nothing would ever be built up there.
Right.
The two gentlemen passed away a few years back, and so did Bill. He was the last survivor, and my understanding again is that he passed that on to an organization that would preserve it forever.
Well, they probably saw people building houses getting closer and closer to the top.
Closer to the top, but they can't build at the very top.
Right.
So.
Very cool. All right. So what retired, rest in peace, Congressman, held his annual holiday celebration at Corona Ranch every year? It was Ed Pastor.
Right. Ed Pastor. What a great guy. Great just a very great personality, just great person to know. If any of you had the opportunity to know him, he always took the time to listen. He was a really good friend of my father. I'll have to tell you, he's kind of related to me in the sense that my wife is his niece. And I met Lilia, my wife Lilia. I met Lilia through Ed, through actually his parties. Lilia was really drunk. No, I'm kidding. No, she wasn't. She'll kill me later, but no. But Ed was, at the time, he was the county supervisor for District 7 down where we have the ranch. And when we acquired the property, he helped my father get the right permits in order to build the property, but became really, really good friends. And through the years, when he became a congressman, he had kind of the obligation, because I was married to his niece, to have his holiday parties at the ranch. No. He was happy to do it, and we were happy to host him there.
Very nice. All right. So who built the irrigation canals that you still use at the ranch, as well as other farmers around there? And it is the Hohokam.
The Hohokam. Absolutely.
Wow, I didn't realize you're still using some of the original canals.
It's we like to think of them as the original canals, but they're very close to, I would say, probably within a couple hundred, maybe a couple 50, 60 feet from where they originally were. But a lot of them are still the same routes. The original one is actually the Salt River. So as you come down right now, there's water flowing down the river.
There's water flowing everywhere right now.
So a lot of the little veins that bleed off that go out to these fields are where kind of how they would get them out to these areas, especially us into Levine there and down south more. But the irrigation, the way it comes down off the property, off the mountain, off of SRP, and from the canals, it comes down through those canals. So we like to think of them as everybody uses them still, and they do.
No, that is great. I love how that history keeps repeating itself and making things grow and flourish just like it used to.
Mm-hmm.
All right. When was the last National Charro
and Escaramuza?
Indeed, I'm glad you said that. Championship held at the Corona Ranch. And it was 2007 B. So what are the national championships?
Well, the national championships are, we perform our Mexican rodeos called charreadas. And our rodeos are, very, I don't want to say very different, but they're pretty different than the American rodeo. Actually, the American rodeo is a takeoff from the Mexican rodeo. A lot of the words are the same. You'll see rodeo is actually called rodeo. The word bosal for the horses, bosal, what goes on the horses, where you have the bit. You have the riata called a riata. So all those words. The story goes that the American rodeo was brought on because the Mexican cowboys, when we were out ranching, we would have different ways of catching the steers or the animals in order to doctor them or brand them. One of the ways was as the steer was running by, the way to grab them was on your horse running next to them, grab them by the tail and then knock them down. And once the steer was down, the other charros or hacendados would come over and hold him down so you could either doctor him or brand him. Another way was roping a racing horse. He's running by. We gotta brand him, roping his hind legs and stopping him slowly, dallying the rope around the saddle and stopping him slowly. So all these things that they did out on the open range eventually became a competition. Oh, my charros are better. My hacienda guys are better than yours. So then haciendas would compete against each other. And the rodeo, the American rodeo, kind of saw the cowboys saw these guys that were really good horsemen, so kind of brought them over and say, hey, start teaching us, some of your techniques. And that's kind of how that started. But the difference between the American rodeo and our charreadas are, the American rodeo is they ride and make points, and you accumulate so many points to make money. Our rodeos are more for the love of the sport. It's a lot of pageantry, a lot of history, and it involves the family. When you say Escaramuza, the women ride. It's an 8-women side saddle drill team. Children start out young riding. The men teach their sons and their children. So it definitely involves the family, and it is the national sport of Mexico. So here in the United States, pretty much, I believe there are 46 teams here in the United States in various different states. And each year there's a competition in a different state, a national championship to see who goes to represent U.S. in Mexico. So last time we held one here at Corona Ranch was in 2007.
Wow. That's so cool. I didn't realize that our rodeo kind of started from, it makes sense. People just saw what they knew and then adapted it.
It is. It's pretty interesting to see the very similarities of it when you're looking at the Mexican rodeo and the American rodeos. The saddles are different. Our ropes are different. We use a rope that's made out of the tequila plant, the maguey plant. What they do is they pull the fibers apart and braid them into a rope that can measure 60 meters in length. An American rodeo rope is made of nylon. Our saddles, you'll notice a Mexican saddle has a big horn on it, big horn in the middle. The American saddle has a small horn on it. The reason being is that we rope a lot and use that horn. We dally the rope around the horn and let it bleed out, so you'll see it slide out. It creates a lot of smoke. It's really interesting to see that, but the more you do that, that horn starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's what, very different, a lot more comfortable.
I'm sure it is. Well, I love how people already started. It's like they already know the next question is, how did you do? And I always tell people, it's like, it's not what you got right. It's more that we're all winners, because look at the great stories we've heard. We now know so much more about the Orpheum as well as Corona Ranch.
Yeah.
Which I know I've been to several times. I hope other folks have been as well.
Yeah, keep coming out. Come out and join us. We do a lot of different events, open to the public as well as private, and it's what I hear all the time when I get guests to come on for the first time. Wow, this is the best hidden secret in Arizona. We're 15 minutes from downtown, and it really is, not because it belongs to my family, but I truly believe it's something that everybody should see at least once.
Well, and it's funny. I was just talking to a friend who does a lot with event planners, and he was saying, Corona Ranch gets like some of the highest ratings in the valley for people wanting to work with them again and again. Well, so I think that really is a testament to you and your family and all what you do, and really make everyone feel comfortable when they're there.
Well, thank you, Marshall. That's, and that comes down from my mother and father, always having a family-owned business. It's not always about how much income you make. It's about how you treat your customers, how you treat your community. And we represent a part of the valley that sometimes is under-recognized. But we've been there going on almost 50 years. And we've held some of the most spectacular events you've ever seen. We've done parties for the Super Bowl. Every year we host Super Bowl. We had media party for Super Bowl. We've had Maroon 5 there. We've had
Cher
for private events.
You had Cher.
Yeah, we had Cher just recently, not too long ago. So it is something that we're very proud of as a family, and we give thanks to our community to allow us to continue to be there.
Indeed. Well, Alex, thank you so much for being a guest on tonight and sharing some of your amazing history.
Oh, Marshall, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and this was a lot of fun.
It was. I look forward to getting together for a lovely margarita.
Let's do it. Let's do it
All
soon.
right. Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Marshall.
All right.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Have a good night, Alex.
You too. Thank you.
One last cheer before he goes. There we go. Oh my gosh. Wow. That was so much fun. And, and I said, it's like, you'll be sorry if you don't share, because you'll realize that you really should have shared, because look at all those great stories. All right, so now coming up is a little bit of show and tell. And because we're kind of talking about South Phoenix a little bit, I want to dig up something. So the movie from Disney's Song of the South, which you can no longer find on Disney Plus. Well, actually, it never made it to Disney Plus. It was Splash Mountain, was the theme of Splash Mountain. And I hear that is going away. I think it's going to be Disney Princesses or something as you're going through Splash Mountain. But when I was at one point obsessed with Disney, I couldn't find enough information about Disney. So I was trolling through newspapers and came across an ad for Song of the South premiering at the Orpheum Theater. And the ad says it was filmed mainly in Phoenix. And so I started talking to friends going, where was it filmed? And so everyone kept saying, oh, it was likely way out in Indian School. And I'm like, well, that just made no sense. It didn't look anything like what it needed to. And then I found this clip that shows a little bit of kind of behind the scenes of what it looked like as they were filming here in Arizona. And so you can kind of get a little bit of look. Now, a lot of folks think that this movie was filmed in Atlanta or near Atlanta, like I did. And when I found out it was here, I started researching and discovered that they tried filming near Atlanta, but they could not get the white staff to work with the black staff. And so they wound up shutting down the movie, relocating it here to the valley, and they were filming down in Laveen along a canal. And so it took me a while to actually discover where. I mean, everything I was finding didn't make any sense. And you can see, and this is actually where Uncle Walt got the nickname Uncle, was from this. And so as I was researching this, I came across an article. Let's see, how do I stop that? I came across an article talking about how a woman in Laveen had married into a pioneer ranch family, the McDonald Ranch. Her husband passed away, and so she just kept running the ranch. And so somehow Disney and her connected. And so on her ranch is where that movie was shot. Now, it's a movie that a lot of people actually call racist because of its treatment of the black actors, how they were portrayed. I've actually done a showing of this with some friends, and we invited Dr. Lester from ASU to come to talk back afterwards. And it was really enlightening to hear different perspectives on this movie. So next week, we have a really exciting week. We have the Western Spirit Museum. Alpha in Scottsdale is going to be guest with Wade, their head of education. So that's going to be a super fun show, and you'll learn things you never knew as well. Kind of some shocking things. So, all right. So remember, if you have any questions, stories, suggestions, if you have questions that you didn't get into the chat, you can always put those into an email, Instagram, or Facebook. So there's so many ways to communicate, and I love to hear from you folks. Sometimes that's where some of my best leads come from. I mean, I'm getting something in the mail tomorrow that's got really cool history. So I'll have to figure out how I can work that in. So, all right. So as we bid you good evening, I want to give another shout out to Alex. Thank you so much, Alex. As well as my friends Chris and Cole, who created that video as well as wrote the music. Now, as we say goodnight, the outro is going to be Mr. Ho Orchestratica, who is from Sunny Slope originally, and he's off on the East Coast having a grand time with his own orchestra as he rewrites music to sound completely different. And thank you all so much, and have a great rest of your evening.